You think you know a bedtime story. You think it's for children, a simple tale to drift off to. But what if I told you, the most important story of my life was told to me at bedtime, and it wasn't for a child. It was for me. A man of 52, sitting by the window, listening to an old man spin a tale that would unravel my entire world. If you've ever loved, ever lost, or ever wondered about the road not taken, then this story is for you. Stay with me. And if this telling resonates with you, well, we have more tales where this came from. A like or a subscribe helps us find them for you. His name was Samuel, and he was the night watchman at the old textile mill that closed down back in '78. To everyone in our small town, he was just Sam, the quiet, gentle giant who'd tip his cap and offer a soft evening as he made his rounds. But to me, for one extraordinary summer, he was a magician. My father was sick that year, and my mother spent her nights at the hospital. To keep me out of trouble, she'd paid Sam a few dollars a night to keep an eye on me. So I'd sit with him in his tiny, lamplit shack, the smell of old oil and wood smoke clinging to the air, and he'd tell me stories. Not fairy tales, not fables. He called them his grown-up lullabies. The first one was about a young man, a musician, who fell in love with a girl he saw singing in a jazz club in New Orleans. Her voice, Sam said, was like honey and heartbreak all mixed together. The musician played piano, and together they were magic. They dreamed of heading to Chicago, cutting a record, making a life. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Her family needed her back home in some little town I'd never heard of. A sick father, a family store on the brink of failure. She left him a note, a single line, and was gone by morning. The musician, heart shattered, never played again. He packed his music away in an old trunk and just started walking. He walked until his shoes wore out, until the memory of her voice faded from a scream to a whisper. He ended up in a nowhere town, took a nowhere job, and lived a quiet, small life. A life of what-ifs. Sam finished the story, looked out at the silent, looming mill, and said, "Some songs ain't meant to be finished, son. They just hang in the air like a half-remembered dream." I was just a kid, but I felt the weight of that story. It felt true. Night after night, it was the same. I'd arrive, and Sam would have a new story. They were all variations on a theme. Love found and then lost, not to some grand tragedy, but to the slow, quiet erosion of time and circumstance. A soldier who promised to come home to his girl but got stuck on the other side of the world, his letters never reaching her. A painter who left his masterpiece, a portrait of his wife, unfinished on the easel the day she passed, unable to ever pick up the brush again. Each story was a masterpiece of melancholy, and each one ended with Sam staring into the middle distance, his old eyes glistening in the lamplight. I started to see him not as the night watchman, but as a repository of all the world's quiet sorrows. I began to wonder where these stories came from. Were they from books? From movies? They felt too raw, too intimately detailed to be anything but real. The twist came on a rainy Tuesday. The shack felt smaller, the drumming on the tin roof making a cocoon around us. That night's story was different. It was about the musician again, the one from the first story. Sam said the man never stopped loving the girl from New Orleans, that he'd written her a letter every year on the anniversary of the day she left. He'd never mailed a single one. He kept them all, tied with a faded blue ribbon, in that same old trunk with his sheet music. He wrote of his quiet life, his regrets, his enduring love for her. He wrote about the day he finally stopped walking and took the job at the mill. He wrote about a boy he'd been watching over, a boy who reminded him of his own younger, more hopeful self. My blood ran cold. The details, the mill, the boy. Sam wasn't just telling a story. He was reading from one of those letters. The musician was him. I must have gasped, because he stopped narrating and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time all summer. The gentle mask of the storyteller fell away, and I saw the raw, aching truth beneath. "The stories," I whispered, my voice trembling. "They're all yours, aren't they?" He didn't nod. He didn't need to. The pain in his eyes was confirmation enough. Every lost love, every regretted decision, every dream left to gather dust in the attic of his heart. They were all his. He had been the soldier, the painter, the countless other heartbroken men in his tales. He had lived a dozen lives of quiet desperation, right here in this small town. He had been collecting his own losses, polishing them like stones, and presenting them to me as nightly parables. But why? Why show a boy the deep, blue sadness of the world? A life ain't measured by the loves you hold on to, son, he said, his voice rough with an emotion I was too young to name. It's measured by the ones you let go and the grace you find after. He opened a drawer in his desk and took out a small, faded photograph. It was of a young couple, laughing, her head on his shoulder. Him, with a full head of dark hair and a smile I'd never seen, holding a woman of breathtaking beauty. She was the singer from New Orleans. Her name was Eleanor. He told me then that the stories weren't just about loss. They were a map of all the places his courage had failed him. He was trying to teach me the routes he wished he'd taken, the words he wished he'd said, before I ever had to learn the hard way. He was giving me the compass he never had. The final revelation, the one that truly reshaped my entire universe, came a week later. My father was coming home from the hospital, and my nights with Sam were ending. On our last evening, he was quieter than usual. The air was thick with unspoken goodbyes. He handed me a small, heavy box. "Open this," he said, "when you're old enough to understand what's inside. When you have a love worth fighting for." I took the box, confused, but promised I would. Years passed. I grew up. I went to college, fell in love, got my heart broken, pieced it back together. I thought of Sam often, of his stories, and the weight of that box on my shelf. I understood his lessons more with every passing year. Then, on the eve of my wedding, I finally opened it. Inside wasn't just a bundle of letters tied with a blue ribbon. Beneath them was a smaller, older box. And inside that was a ring. A simple, beautiful gold band. And engraved on the inside were two names, Samuel and Eleanor. And a date. A date that was just a month after the story of their separation in New Orleans. My hand shook. The letters, they weren't letters of regret to a lost love. They were anniversary letters. He had written to her every year. Because she hadn't left him. She had been coming back. They had been married. The real story, the true story he never told me that summer, was that she had been his wife for 40 wonderful years. She had passed away 5 years before I met him. The stories of loss, they weren't his regrets. They were his love letters. They were how he kept her alive, how he processed the immense, defining love of his life by imagining a world where he had never had it at all. He wasn't teaching me about regret. He was teaching me about the breathtaking scale of a love so great that the thought of losing it was the most terrifying story he could possibly tell. He wanted me to know what was at stake. He wanted me to fight for a love like that. So you see, the bedtime stories were true, just not in the way I first believed. They were the stories of a love so profound that its imagined absence could fill 1,000 nights. Sam wasn't a man defined by his losses. He was a giant defined by a love he carried with him every single day. He taught me that the greatest stories aren't about princes or dragons. They're about the choices we make, the people we cherish, and the love we have the courage to hold on to. They are the stories we tell ourselves at night to make sense of the beautiful, heartbreaking, wonderful journey of a life fully lived. If you've made it this far, you understand. You have your own stories. Feel free to share them below. And if you'd like to journey back with us again, a subscription is always welcome. But for now, remember to hold your loved ones close. The best stories are the ones we're still living.